For my daughter's 21st birthday a couple of years ago, we took a trip to Vietnam.
This is the roof restaurant at our hotel in Hanoi, and that's just the average morning traffic. Probably lighter because it's raining.
After a nice breakfast in a hotel, we went over and met with the people from off-road Vietnam, checked out and packed our motorcycles, got ready to hit the road. The plan was to drive 1,000 miles in 8 days, doing a loop of northern Vietnam, all the way up to the border with China, and return back to Hanoi. Step one was probably the hardest part, getting out of Hanoi alive. So when there was a lull in traffic and the rain had stopped, we got in behind our guide and dove into the traffic. My daughter's job was to follow our guide and not crash.
Okay, daughter.
My job was to watch her six and try to keep people from forcing her off the road. But the habits, tactics that we use in the US would not work here. There's no such thing as personal space. There's enough room to get your front wheel in front of my bike. Somebody's going to sneak in front of you. Leaving a safe space in front of you does not work here, as you can see. My daughter had probably less than 100 hours total of motorcycle time, 50% off-road, 50% on-road. Her on-road experience was mostly the motorcycle course she had to take to get her license, so she wouldn't have to take classes or anything when we got to Vietnam. She's a quick learner. She's a tough girl. I could feel the acid in my stomach burning in the back of my throat all the way through Hanoi. So what you're seeing here is just a sample of the over 1 hour driving in city traffic getting out of Hanoi. Since we took our trip, they have added another option for another 100 or 150 bucks per person per bike. They will drive you and your motorcycle outside of Hanoi, and you can pick it up there. Start your adventure on the road. Get used to your bike.
Watch the curb. Watch the curb. Good dog. That's the fastest way to go down.
I would highly recommend this. The further away we got from the city, downtown area of Hanoi, the less traffic there was, and the more road construction we saw.
Oh, shit. Right away.
There was still traffic, but remember there are no hard and fast rules, except whoever's bigger has the way. If you look closely, you can see my daughter can barely touch the ground with her tippy toes. She's just a little over 5 foot tall. I have to give her a lot of credit for how well she did, how quickly she learned to handle this bike. I chose a Honda CRF 250L, and for my daughter the 130. Great bikes. Since we survived the roads of Hanoi and beyond, our guide decided to test our off-road skills in an area that, well, we wouldn't risk too much. Unfortunately,
And she's down.
there was a big chunk of concrete right on the edge of the trail my daughter found.
Oh, I didn't see that big thing there.
This was the first of several falls, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, that my daughter had on day one, but they were falls. They weren't crashes. and all due to the fact that she couldn't reach the ground.
For the Golden Gate Bridge.
A short time later, we found ourselves climbing the foothills into a tea farm. Interesting terrain. The track was still nice and easy at this point. However, there can be surprises hiding around every corner.
Oh shit.
Think got hurt? No. Okay. What are you doing?
Videotaping her. Show me your, show me your cocoa.
Nice. Remember.
At the end of day one, we had a nice homestay, great meal with the local family and a few other riders, and Elena had some rice wine.
Wow, look at that place.
The variety of construction zones that we went through definitely tested your skills in different ways. Nothing that difficult, however, for someone who can't reach the ground, it did present some new problems. On this particular fall, she had a small burn to her leg. Should have been wearing jeans, but somewhere along the way on, she cracked a couple of ribs, and we had to go to a hospital to get her checked out. We had another homestay, and my daughter ended up drinking our guide under the table. I guess he was a lightweight. I had high expectations for the scenery and the terrain in Vietnam, and I was not disappointed. As we headed further up into the mountains, we learned more about karst formations, limestone mountains, where the softer soils erode over the centuries, leaving these very jagged peaks. Northern Vietnam and China are two places in the world where these karst formations are very dramatic. As a matter of fact, the movie Avatar, the floating mountains, were patterned after the karst formations in China. When the fog lays low in the valleys, all the peaks of these rise above the clouds, and it looks like floating mountains. That's where they got the name. Here we took a well-deserved break at the top of the Snake Road.
Có đi trước và vừa đến đây nó cũng là già. Và trong khi đó con này nó để số 1 thì bạn chạy sợ. Đéo bao giờ khá ăn rồi. Mãi Jesus.
While hitting a chicken might even cause a fall, nowhere near the danger of running into a water buffalo. Not just the water buffalo, but what they leave behind. If you happen to hit one of those slimy droppings, it could throw you down.
Nice. Remember. Yes.
Limestone quarry, huh? We're correct.
Our guide Sean was fantastic. Great personality, always up, and he altered our route depending upon our abilities and our interests. As we got a little better, a little more comfortable with the conditions, he tested us further.
princess. But
Off-road Vietnam had another group, 8 Australians. Their guide had a drone with them, so we got to share some footage. After crossing the lake and a good night's sleep in a small town, we headed north. After leaving the border between China and Vietnam, we headed back south. At one point, I swapped helmets with our guide, Sean, so that he could videotape us. This next evening, I was reviewing the day's video recordings, and I found some interesting audio. I think you'll understand why, at the end of our trip, I gave him my helmet with built-in speakers and a GoPro knockoff. The ride back to Hanoi was just as scenic as the ride north. The weather was great until we got down to the flatlands, and of course, we still had to deal with all that traffic coming into Hanoi. There was no rain, however, we hit rush hour traffic. There's no footage of that, unfortunately, but it was quite a bit worse than the outbound. At one point, I actually got forced off the road for a short, well, just for a moment. Throughout the trip, we enjoyed quite a variety of foods and drinks. As I mentioned before, rice wine was a regular pretty much every night wherever we were. My daughter had pho every chance she could. Beer was cheaper than Coca-Cola. Actually, I asked for a Coca-Cola one time and they brought me a coconut. And my daughter wasn't afraid to try some of the local dishes. I, however, made a huge error in getting a haircut. When we arrived back in Hanoi, we took a short break and then our transport took us over to Halong Bay. for a 3-day, 2-night tour. After we settled into our quarters, we went up to the top deck so we could enjoy the view. Halong Bay and Baitulong Bay had over 1,600 islands. It was made famous in the movie The Man with the Golden Gun, where the villain had his own private island. On day 2, we took a small shuttle boat tour of a pearl farm. Very interesting, and of course, there was that stop where they try to sell you pearls. My son is into rock climbing, so I had to take a little video of this. Be a great place to practice your free climbing, where if you make a mistake, you fall down into the water. If you're already in Vietnam, you might as well take the short flight over to Cambodia to Siem Reap, to see Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom, and all the other historic sites.
Angkor Wat.
Nhìn mê.
At sunrise. Nice. Remember. This is.
Another interesting historical site in the area is the Landmine Museum. It's actually very interesting, very informative. There are relics from the Korean War and well beyond. If you're in Southeast Asia, quite a few locations have elephants that offer elephant rides. Personally, I think this is kind of cool. You can spend about the same amount of money, actually spend less money, and just buy some fresh fruit and feed the elephants. I thought this was a lot better. The elephant handlers don't mind at all because the elephants get free food. And as you can see, the elephants don't mind either. After feeding the elephants, it was time to feed ourselves. We wanted to get to here. In order to get there, we started by taking a cooking class and going down to the local farmer's market. Okay, for under $20 a piece, the head chef lets each participant pick an entree, a side dish, and a dessert. You go down to the market after that, pick out all of your ingredients, and then she walks us through the process of cooking the meal.
What kind of are those? Yes, but what kind?
The best part is, at the end, for under $20 a piece, you get to eat the results.